Hey, what's going on? It's Taylor McQuaid, and on today's episode of Wellness on the Rocks, Stout Public House is in the building. That's right, I said it. My coworker from the bar joins me today to talk wellness in the industry and the duality of her life that she experiences between working in the world of mental health and working in a neighborhood pub. During the day, she's a somatics educator and a mental health practitioner. She leads alternative therapy sessions like breathwork and hypnosis, but when the sun goes down, she's at Stout Public House pumping out Reuben sandwiches and pints of Guinness. On today's episode, we discuss how a significant part of the hospitality industry involves navigating interactions with people facing real mental health challenges, emphasizing the importance of having empathy, but not tolerating people's bullshit. We explore the difference between self-care and abstinence when working around alcohol, as well as how to embrace self-expression and leverage the tools of digital media for self-promotion in today's world. We're recording on location at the beautiful Valkyrie Yoga Studio in Ocean Beach, where Chelcy teaches. Welcome to the show, my good friend, Seya Speak Pine, aka Chelcy. Cheers, dude. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you coming out. Cheers. Cheers, cheers, cheers. This is a little different setting than we usually work in. So what's the name of the studio we're in? Valkyrie Studio. Okay. And this is where you work. And how long have you been doing yoga here for, teaching yoga?
So here, I've been with the same group of people. My dear friend Agneta owns the studio. So it's been here in July. It'll be 2 years. But there's a group of teachers who teach here that we've all been teaching together for almost, I want to say 9 years.
Wow.
Almost 9 years.
Oh, you've been with the same group for 9 years.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That's
then she moved to Austin for a while. And then when she moved back, we've all been teaching. We all met in Ocean Beach, and then we've been teaching together. And then when she opened up the studio, we all came back together.
What made you want to get into teaching yoga?
Honestly, that's a good question, because when I first moved here, I moved here from Michigan in 2013 because I just got my bachelor's in poetry. And so I had this decision. I was 23, and I was like, okay, I could either move to New York and get my master's in poetry, or I could move to San Diego and just take a year and see what that feels like. And then when I got here, I think within the first year, I started practicing yoga pretty religiously, like almost every single day, because I was experiencing a lot of asthma.
Okay.
So I had a lot of breathing problems. So the more I started practicing it, the more I wanted to learn about it. And then once I started studying it enough, one of the assignments that we had was to actually practice teaching. And so I started doing like a donation-based class just once a week. And then from there, it was just like opportunities kept coming. And I think it took about a year for me to realize that it was becoming like a career path instead of just something on the side.
So you had like health issues, and then you jumped into yoga to try to help those. Mm-hmm. You found it helping so much, you enjoyed it so much, you're like, yo, I kind of want to teach this.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So you and I know each other from Stout. We obviously, you're my coworker there, you're a waitress. How long have you been waiting tables for? Was that before the yoga stuff, or is that something you just did?
Yeah. That's the only reason I could afford all my yoga education and all my somatics.
Oh, okay.
Education was because I've been in the service industry since, my first job ever, I was 15 and I worked at McDonald's.
Wow. In Michigan?
In Michigan.
Wow.
Yeah. I was making, I think, $5.15 an hour. And all through the winter, I was like the back window. So I would have to do dishes with my little hands like in the freezing water and then work the window. But I loved working there. I loved working at McDonald's. I worked there for 4 years.
Really?
Yeah.
So you were 15 years. What did you like? What did you like about it?
I think I've just always really, as much as I really at this point in my life don't believe in overworking myself. I think I just always had a work ethic of like doing the most. And I think I just really liked the busyness of it because I was also in high school at the time. So it almost felt like a buffer between studying, because studying was not very easy to me. So doing something busy that was also kind of on autopilot felt like it helped me be able to do other things in my life.
That's what I noticed. That's what you just said is like, I noticed that when I started waiting tables too. It's like busy work. It's tedious work. It's like if you have like ADHD or something, it's almost like soothing for that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if you can
exactly.
like make money doing it, it's like, you're killing two birds with one stone.
Right.
So, oh wow, that's interesting. You started at McDonald's, and then when did you start working in restaurants?
I started working in restaurants. Let's see, I moved to college. I was 18. Started working at a coffee shop, and then it was like a fast-paced morning job. I was working from like 5 to 11 a.m. while I was in school
like
full time.
A diner or something like that?
It was called
5
Big
to
B.
11 a.m. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
5 to 11 a.m. So we were just like pushing coffees out. Everyone was coming through. There was a drive-through. But while I was working there, I think I also started at a Ruby Tuesday at night. So I was 20 when I started like waiting tables.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it's kind of, that's why I like this industry, is because it's for people who have work ethic and can figure out, while they're trying to figure out the other things in their life, like start a business or do the yoga stuff, like you can survive and get by and make money doing that stuff.
Totally. And that's something where when I moved out here, I mean, I had just gotten my bachelor's degree, but I really did want to take a break from trying to look for a writing job or doing anything within journalism, because I felt like I had studied so much and worked full time while I was studying that I was at such an intense level of burnout at such a young age that I was like, actually, I just want to be in the service industry.
Yeah.
And I mean, that has its own burnout factors, obviously, as well. But I did love that when I was able to move here, I had the mornings and the daytime to myself, and then I could work nights and still make a living.
Yeah.
And to what you just said, I always loved that I had that as like the skeleton to my career, so that I was able to make money and then still be able to study or start branching off into the career that I have now while I was doing that full time.
So I guess your ultimate goal is you're doing, if you could kind of talk about it, because I don't really know the ins and outs of what you do, but what's this work? You do like ministry work? Like, so can you kind of like talk about what it is, the school that you're doing and this program you've built, like what it is and sort of why you do it?
Yeah, I love that you said ministry work, because I don't know if I've ever told you I am an ordained minister.
Okay, so that's something separate. Okay, I thought that's okay. Yeah, I don't really know. Okay,
No, but you might be thinking of the mystery school.
Mystery school.
Yes. Like
Ministry, bro.
That's
That's
no, I
smooth,
actually
very smooth.
But it's funny because actually in my breathwork school, a lot of us did become ordained ministers, because with the style of breathwork that I do, which is mostly like at this point in my job with my own practice, that's like the meat and potatoes of what I do is I facilitate breath work for people somatically, which means I have people come in, they breathe in a specific circular, pretty connected way with their diaphragm. And it's a way of really getting people into their body and also helping to lessen the way that their nervous system is responding to triggers in their environment. Or like, to put it in a different kind of language, a lot of people come to me when they're experiencing symptoms of PTSD or they've been through a traumatic incident. They come to see me because breathwork can be a really powerful tool or resource to help them feel safe or comfortable in their body again, so that they're not always feeling like they can't sleep or they're on edge or it's hard for them to manage the tasks that they have to do. But a lot of us did become ordained ministers because it is a hands-on practice.
Yeah.
But to lead into the mystery school is also something that I'm really proud of. So I guess I'll just talk about when I went full-time, kind of like split from Stout being one of my main jobs. The mystery school was something that my best friend, Hamza, who is also a teacher here in San Diego, the two of us had been pretty close for a number of years and taught at a lot of the same studios. And actually before COVID, before March of 2020 and quarantine, I was teaching in 5 different yoga studios, which was a lot. Valkyrie is the only studio that I teach in now. Looking back, I really don't know how I was doing that, because a lot of yoga teachers are independent contractors, which means we'll come teach at one space for an hour. But at that time, I was teaching in La Jolla, I was teaching in Claremont, I was teaching in Poway, Ocean Beach, I think that's it. But when quarantine happened, I had always told myself, okay, I've been in the service industry since I moved here. It's been 7 years of being in the service industry. And at that time I was only in the service industry 2 days a week, which was still great, working Thursday, Friday nights. But that was still enough to where me actually going full time, I didn't have the time or the energy to do that.
So it's almost like we can get comfortable and stuck working in bars,
Right. Yeah,
and
exactly. Or even in the bar that we work in, like not even in this industry in general, but like where we actually are.
Right. If you find a good gig, like why take the risk and try something new when you have good money coming in, you have a system that works.
Right.
And, I think about that all the time. Like, is this going to be my career for the rest of my life? Or do I want to take the chance and put my time, energy, and maybe money into something like this podcast platform? It's kind of tough to manage both, like what you're talking about. Like, and then like when you do take that jump, it's like, how do you manage both of those? It's like, it's tough because basically like the work goes up and the money goes down,
Yeah, especially in the beginning. And they say, I think it's an average of 2 years when you do want to start your own business, like your own LLC, or you're opening up some kind of shop, like a yoga studio, for example. It usually takes about 2 years on average, in San Diego at least, to actually
return on investment, get some money rolling in. Actually, yeah. Sometimes it's way more than that. Sometimes it's less. But so is that kind of where you're at right now? Where you so after COVID, you kind of started your own. So is it your own business? Or like what was that?
Yeah. So I am my own business. Like my business is Sey Speak Somatics. So it's an LLC. I'm an independent contractor. So what that means is I am a somatic practitioner. So yoga is something that I teach. It's honestly like the least of what I teach. I do a lot of different practices, and then I will do them at different centers. Like I've been at a psych unit for almost 7 years. I see them 4 times a week, and I go in, I do breath, movement, and sound healing with them. But to bring it back to your question, when COVID happened, I went into a panic, which I think a lot of us did, because I was not, and a lot of us in the service industry, I mean, some of us were like considered essential workers, like the restaurant stayed open. That was not the case.
No, most restaurants didn't. No. At least where I was, there wasn't any restaurants weren't essential.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people either they would only keep half the staff on, or they close.
They fired everybody, and yeah. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah. And so after that happened, I was like, okay, well, I do feel really lucky and privileged that I have been working on my other career path, because I do consider the service industry to be a huge part of my career throughout my life. And it's gotten me to where I am. But at that moment, it was like, I promised myself for the past couple of years, if I just had a month where I did not have to be in the service industry and I had a couple $1,000s, I would make this happen. I would go full time, because I had built such a foundation. It wasn't like, okay, I have this idea, I'm just going to wing it. Like I'm going to get investors, I'm going to get a storefront, I'm going to get a studio space. Like I had already been building and laying the foundation. So when my friend came back, she had been traveling, so she wasn't even in the country. She came back and we would go on walks like once a week. And she looked at me and said, would you want to start a mystery school? And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I'm interested. And essentially a mystery school is like a underground school, or for example, like historically in all different regions and all different cultures, they would create mystery schools to keep ancient practices sacred and to be able to pass on lineages of certain cultural practices. And they would kind of meet off grid, because, when certain things were changing within systems or civilizations and colonization started happening, those practices would be getting stripped away. So mystery schools were created to keep those practices alive. And so essentially what we did was spend all of 2020 meeting and developing this school for practitioners or people who do things like what I do, which is in the realms of somatics. So our mystery school consisted of teaching people how to do Kundalini yoga was one of them, somatic breathwork was one of them, hypnosis, the Akashic records, and herbalism. Those were like the 5 modules that we had. And we had people in San Diego that would sign up, and we did a a 5-month long school where we would see each other twice a week for 5 months and learn these practices and have experiences with these practices together. And then we ran that school for 4 years.
So who are the people who come visit you and use your school product class? Like who are the types of people that do that?
It's usually people, the first year, I think a lot of the people who showed up were people, because honestly, as much as 2020 changed everything for so many of us, I think there was a lot of opportunity in the microcosm of the community that we were in San Diego, where people were already in yoga studios and having spiritual practices or spiritual experiences. So a lot of the people that showed up the first year had met us through those ways, like through yoga or in the yoga community. And those were the people who showed up because they wanted to deepen their studies of understanding the practices that we were offering. And then also we were passing on the lineages of like, okay, you can learn about the history and the techniques of this. And then you can also step into teaching this thing or holding this kind of experience for people, being a facilitator.
You're passing it along to those people to try to maybe start their own practice or something.
Exactly. Like teaching the teachers.
I guess like why do you do all that? What's your purpose behind doing that school and everything that you do here with the yoga and everything like that?
I could answer that in so many ways. That's a powerful question. The reason why, I think looping it back to what we were talking about in the beginning, like how I started getting into teaching yoga, was really because for a number of years I was experiencing pretty serious asthmatic attacks, to the point that I was on nebulizers, that I had to have emergency breathing machines. There was a couple of times I would lose consciousness from it. I couldn't catch my breath, and it didn't feel like steroid inhalers were necessarily helping. Emergency inhalers would kind of help to a certain extent, but I always had this feeling of like a rock being stuck in my throat. It always felt like no matter how deeply I tried to take a breath, I couldn't get around this block in the base of my throat, and it got to the point that it honestly felt like I experienced a lot of mental OCD around it, where like I would wake up and if I could hear myself breathing.
So why do you do all of this?
That's why.
Okay.
Because I know a lot of people, because at any time I would try to tell a doctor about it or try to tell the people around me about it, everyone was like, okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. Like, try this. That wouldn't work. Nothing was working.
Okay.
And I know that a lot of people experience, of course, I work with people who have a lot of very visual disabilities. And I also work with a lot of people who have pretty invisible disabilities or invisible illnesses, where they're experiencing these like psychosomatic symptoms and they're not able to get real answers as to why they're experiencing it. So that can perpetuate such a dysregulated state for the nervous system. And if left untreated or misunderstood, then that person can often go to a totally different place, especially in regards to their mental health. Because of course, with what I do, it affects the physical body, of course, but I really look at it all through like a mental health lens, because that was what pulled me to this. So that is really my why, is because I think a lot of us don't have space where we can understand what it is that we're experiencing as far as illness or blockages or pain in the body. And I find that these kind of practices can help people understand that.
Yeah, it's like an alternative. It's like naturopathic almost.
Totally. And I definitely do not think that what I do with, for example, the breath work, I would never, if someone's coming to me and they're experiencing serious illness or they're having some kind of symptoms that are beyond, what we can address in breath work, I always recommend going to a doctor, because I am not a doctor. I am a mental health practitioner. I am very educated in trauma-informed somatic therapy, and I have a lot of understanding in that lens. And I also think that Western medicine has its place. I just tend to draw in a lot of people or work with a lot of people who Western medicine, they've kind of hit a dead end with. It's like nothing is getting them better. Yeah.
I was in a place recently where like I was like taking fish oil and turmeric and eating veggies for my joints, and then like I still wasn't doing anything. I went to a chiropractor. He's like, dude, your spine is fucked.
Yeah.
So like I was like, oh wow, like I could take all the fish oil in the world, but like, you know, at some point you got to go get that shit fixed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
so
like if we don't know what's actually happening underneath what we can see.
Yeah.
You're right. It's like we need both.
You need both.
Yeah.
You need both. I think just like those people who only go to the doctor and only take the pills and the Ambien and the Xanax, like that's bad. But if you only are all naturopathic and you know live that lifestyle, but you never go see the doctor, you get an infection, like you gotta have a balance of both. I think.
Yeah,
you
like
can't be all or one. I don't think that's good for everybody.
Breathwork is not gonna like I can't heal a broken bone if you come to me with a broken arm.
Ribs.
Like,
I mean, there's nothing. Yeah.
No, I can do a lot for the emotional response and the way that maybe your nervous system is reacting or has been holding on to tension for a long time, and the way that that is affecting you mentally and energetically, even spiritually. I'll say like all the planes of who we are as people. But yeah, there's certain things that we do need,
right?
Like medical experts for.
So in terms of everything that you're currently building, you're a few years into building this thing. Like when you are at your full potential with this thing, like years to come down the road, like what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about a lot because I just hit the 5-year mark of working for myself, and I have learned a lot. Like a lot of times, especially in somatic work, we always talk about how the body remembers a lot of things even when the mind doesn't. So say, for example, like a date of grief comes around, even if we're not remembering, oh, this is the day that happened, we'll start noticing like mood changes or pain presenting itself in our body again, the same way that it did when the initial, experience happened. And so because of that, with it being April of 2025, April of 2020 was really when I was like really starting out. And so I've been looking back and reflecting a lot of where I've come, because I do have the tendency, as much as this is my career, and this is something that it's not just my career. This is like how I live my life. This is the lens I look through for myself and my relationships and everything around me. I've been in a space of reflection because I look back and I'm like, wow, there was a lot of things that I said yes to and kind of dove into because I was newer at doing this. So it was just like, oh, any opportunity that comes my way, I'm going to say yes to. And so last year I took a huge step back. We did not run our mystery school last year, which is usually what I do 6 months a year. I didn't run a lot of the cohorts or the programs or the trainings that I normally run because I wanted to reflect. So now when you ask me that, it looks very different because I'm starting to see things in a way where I don't want to be depleting my energy of doing so much, going to this place to do this and then coming home and doing 4 sessions back to back. I don't want to deplete myself, nor do I think that is necessary. So when I look 5 years, I'll say like 5 years down the road or continuing on this path, I've stepped more into an educator role rather than just a practitioner. So for example, the best way I can compare it is like when you go to a therapy session and you see someone one-on-one, you do that a number of times until maybe something changes and then you go to see someone else or you take a break. Whereas I've kind of stepped into this place of not doing so much of that, but being more on the educator side of it and all that I have learned. And within that, I've something unique in my practice that I started doing 3 years ago that I wish I would have done in the beginning is keeping track of all my clients' sessions, not in a way of like therapist notes that they don't see, but in a way of having private documents where I record things that come up in their session and then they can see what happens so we can both track I don't like to say the progress because it's not like, oh, this needs to happen by this day. But those are things that I'm starting to look at turning into educational manuals, text, and also creating more things that are available in a virtual space, like online programs that people can do no matter what day and time or space it is, so that I'm not having to be in person as much. And I see that really being like the next big expansion for the next 5 years, I would say.
Okay. So giving it back to the people so they can, no, that's good. Do you think that like when you do, like, do do you think you're going to feel fulfilled when you do hit that? Like, what does that feel like for you? Do you feel right now that you're fulfilled with everything you're doing? Or are you still like, not, I need to achieve more. I need to be better, put out a better product. Like what does fulfillment in this aspect mean for you?
I do. I feel incredibly fulfilled with what I do. And I look back at, because you and I know each other from Stout, and I'm so grateful for Stout. Stout's been a part of my life for years now. And at the same time, I look back and I'm like, wow, I really did that at 30 years old. Like, I haven't really had to say yes to, bosses that I don't agree with or align with, or I haven't had to work with businesses or people who are not kind of like working towards what I'm working towards, which is ultimately creating more healing space and more safety within our community here, but also trusting that the work that I do in this world has a huge ripple effect on how that person decides to take what they learn and apply it to their family or apply it to their children or apply it to themselves and feel like they can have more fulfillment in their life. So I feel like if I was done today, I would feel incredibly grateful and like it was a success. And on the other side of that, I want to be careful with what I do, because I want to always remember that that's my intention and that I'm not in this career path, or I am not in this work to necessarily be the most financially successful. I think my success right now is measured energetically and based on the response I see in my community.
Okay, nice. Very nice. So let's talk about the bar for a little bit. I like having you as a coworker because I think that what's nice about the job here with us at Stout is we do have that small, tight-knit family, and everybody does come into work, checks their bullshit at the door, and they work, and they say, I'm here to work. I'm not here to cause problems or be lazy or do anything. Nobody needs to be policed or managed or anything like that. And I can kind of see why, I see why you got hired at Stout. I feel like as a coworker, like you do have this ability to just connect with people and just like give out positive energy. You understand people, you have that work ethic, you care. And I think it's important to have those aspects because customers can really tell when you don't. You know what I mean? Like, you ever been at a bar and you're like, this person doesn't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, you
Which
see
I
that.
also understand.
Yeah, well, I don't think you have that aspect. Yeah. At least when I work with you, I don't see it. And I think that like there's a group of people in this industry who get hired because of like attractiveness and ability to flirt with guys or like big tits and things like that. Like, I think that like I understand why because you've been working at Stout a lot longer than I have, but I understand like why they hired you is because they saw like, oh, this person could bring value to our team because of their work ethic, their personality, their hustle, their understanding. So like it's nice to work with people like that because it's not all over the place. Let me ask you this in terms of like you and I have talked a little bit about like how there's addiction. We've dealt with our own issues. We have friends, we have exes who deal with that stuff. Like, has it been challenging for you to have friends who suffer from addiction and to be around that? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And it's very interesting because sometimes people will be like, wait, you still work in a bar sometimes? And I'm like, yeah, I love like the duality of life. I do love that when we are there, I've known the people who work with us at Stout for 12 years, and some of them are truly family to me. And also I've had a lot of people be, concerned for me working in that environment with my own sense of recovery. And I've also had people, my friends who deal with addiction or who are in recovery say, well, isn't that like you're kind of enabling, or in a lot of ways, like you're feeding into that. And of course, I always feel like there is this aspect of the service industry, whether I'm there or not, like there is, unfortunately, alcohol is so, and the culture around it is so deeply rooted in American culture. Like that is some people's only sense of community. And so it's very interesting coming from this lens of, especially from, not being in the service industry. I'm really only at Stout when help is needed. And so I'm not on the schedule or regularly there. Lately I have been with you guys, and knowing about my loved ones suffering with addiction and the ways that I have, it's incredibly hard. I think that it's something too that I see a lot of people have good growth and success with when they come at it from, and this was a big reason I was excited to do this with you, honestly, because the way I see Wellness on the Rocks is this talking about, kind of problem solving the intersection between mental health and wellness, and also the culture of the service industry. And so I think that there's a fine line sometimes between what is too much or what is enough. And I love the work that I do and the culture and community that the yoga community, for example, can provide, or the spiritual community. I say that carefully because that can be really vast, and there's danger in every community. There's, there needs to be discernment in every community. But I do find a lot of times addiction can spiral out of control when the only sense of community is within a bar, within, okay, this, I know I can always go there. It's always accessible, and there's always going to be people there. I don't have to be alone there. And I think that can be a very slippery slope. And I also see the why, and I do have compassion for that.
I think, that's something that I think about. Like I do have empathy for people, and like a big thing that I'm trying to like really focus on is like have empathy, not tolerance. Like I have empathy for people and the struggles they go through and the problems they have, but I don't tolerate the bullshit that comes as a result of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
that's smart.
So like I try not to judge people, but like when I see the people who I have built relationships with cross lines, cross boundaries, try to pull, inappropriate things, I fucking cut it off. And I say, I don't know, who the fuck you think you are trying this shit. Like, don't even bring that, you know what I mean? Like
we have to.
And that's why I think that like, people who work in bars, whether it's security guards, bartenders, they get like a reputation of being assholes or rude or fucking like, oh, he's an angry bartender, or the security, he's such a dick. You see that, but it's like when you do have to deal with people who don't know how to properly express themselves, and they just like crazy shit out all the time, and we work in that, like you do either you fold or you build like a set of pushback against that. And so that's like one thing I've learned is like just how to say no. I think it's really important to say no. And I think like you kind of were talking about that earlier. I think building the ability to say no working in restaurants is like huge, because what ends up happening is people just pull you from all different angles. And they say, I need you to work this shift. I need you to do this. Oh, I need another drink. It's like, and if you're just this like kind of mentally not strong human who just wants to people please and say yes to everybody, you're going to get spread thin. And I think that
torn apart.
Yeah, you're going to get torn apart. And I think that was like me for like when I was younger for a while. And it's like, you kind of have to realize you have to set boundaries and say no. To be honest,
I feel like that's something I was talking about this with, and can I share something with you? So a metaphor, and I'm so grateful, honestly, for my backbone. And the reason why I bring up McDonald's and I'm like, I worked at McDonald's is because I feel like these things have built a character in me, right? And I do think, of course, like my nervous system response when I'm experiencing something like really triggering is often fawn. Like it's often the people pleaser, because I'm like, okay, that was my conditioning. Like that was how I was brought up and like what kept me safest. So I've had to unlearn a lot of that. And so a lot of the people that I work with also have that experience where they don't really freeze and they don't really fight. They more so go into like, okay, how can I just like keep the peace instead of actually making it, which I see the difference being like saying no, because it's like, no, I'm going to make this situation peaceful actually, instead of just like letting you get away with whatever behavior is actually crossing a huge boundary. And sometimes in the work that I do, I'll even explain this to people to help them better understand different parts of themselves. I use bar analogies a lot. Like I'll say, because sometimes, within somatic work, a lot of times we identify so strongly with our ego and with these protective parts of us that we think that that's who we are. Like we only think of that one part.
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is like we have the ego, which is the self that I would say in the service industry, we always have to have that on. And actually one of my teachers said this once, because one of the teachings that we were learning was noticing where we speak from depending on the environment that we're in. So like if I'm talking to my sister and she's having like some kind of big emotional experience, like she's really dysregulated, I'm more talking to her from here. Like my voice is softer, I'm breathing differently. But if I'm in the service industry, I'm always talking from here because I have to. It's like I have to be.
You have to be assertive.
Yeah, you have to be assertive. You have to be in charge. You have to know what's going on. You're multitasking. You have to also like you are keeping. You're making the piece. You're not just keeping it. Like we are the ones who are doing that in a lot of ways. Like we are the security guards too, as well as what other function we're doing. But I'll give people this analogy, and I've learned over the years with being within two totally different groups of people that you and I think both are like in the middle of, but people who have no idea of what it's like to work in that kind of environment, and then people who only know that environment. And I'll often say the our ego self is like the security guard, but the ego needs to sit on the bar stool and check the IDs and be at the door and make sure that like anyone who's coming in or out, like they're making sure that the environment is safe. They can't also be the ones pouring drinks. They can't also be the one making the food. Like there has to be different parts of us having different functions. And if we don't notice that, then we can get really carried away into just being in protector mode all the time. Like we think we're a guard dog all the time. And then when are we ever stepping out of that role? Does that make sense?
That on and off switch is tough.
Yeah, it is. And that's why I think for me, or someone who does experience people pleasing tendencies, or that is like my nervous system response usually when there's something like, say people start getting in a fight. Before I worked in the service industry, specifically Stout, I think my response was very different. Whereas now I think working in the service industry has taught me a lot about being able to actually act on something, or to feel like I can still be grounded in a situation that gets really heightened or dysregulating, because our nervous systems have been conditioned to do that over and over again. I think for us, people who work in the industry, I think the actual trick for us is how to not be in that all the time. Like, how do you
decompress
shift out of the like,
days off?
I gotta be on guard.
Seriously, yeah.
And I gotta be ready to fight. Like, how can I? But for me personally, I think it's been really powerful for me, because that is an environment where I can practice saying no, or I can practice being like, no, that's not okay the way you just grab me. Like, because people for some reason love to think that they can touch us in the service industry. It's like, you do not need to touch the small of my back because you need another drink. I'm looking right at you. Yeah. And that is something that I feel like 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh, that made me uncomfortable, but okay. And now I'm like, like I grabbed someone's arm the other day and I'm like, do not. Yeah.
With women, it's a form of power and control and dominance.
Which is like, that's why I'm like,
you got to understand that. It's like when somebody puts the hand on the back, or like it's just
the
like,
arm. Like grabbing the arm.
The way I have always told the women that I work with, whether I've managed, I have been bartender, server, like if anyone ever touches you or anything, you can fucking tell them to go fuck themselves. Like there's no courtesy
something
with
I
that
love
shit.
about Stout Public House.
You know, but it's like, no, but if you like, I don't know if people feel acceptable to touch people. I fucking hate that.
I'm like, would I ever,
no, or you just touch, or you grab them back. Somebody puts their hand on your arm, you grab their fucking arm twice as hard and you look at them like, I don't like that.
I think I told you I did that to someone that comes into our bar and thought that they could call me a name. They thought they could say, "Hey, sex kitten," and touch my arm.
Men I really do that.
Grabbed their arm and I was like, "Do not fucking touch me." And that's powerful, because then
you're setting boundaries.
Yeah, and then my body. But I don't have many opportunities at this point in my life to create boundaries like that, and those moments do make me feel safer in myself. It's like, okay, I'm good.
Here's the thing: because if you don't say anything, then that guy comes in the next time and says it, and then we are a creature of habit, and what we do is we push until there is a line and limit drawn, and sex kitten turns into another comment. The next thing that goes is like, hey, let's get a beer after, and it's just like people will push until you put up a boundaries. And so many, and it's not even men with women, it's just everything. It's like, I deal with that with customers, seeing what they can get away with.
Yeah.
Oh, like, are you going to buy me a drink? And it's like, when people ask me that, I think it's so fucking rude but it's just like, people will push until you tell them no. And some people, but what happens is you have these like sociopathic customers who like don't know how to properly connect with people. They only know how to connect with people through dysfunction and through chaos. And so
sexualizing.
Because they're like broken and, you know, they have struggled or have whatever has gone through their lives. But I'm like, I see that in the way that certain people connect with women and shit. They'll they'll start off with an insult because that insult gets your emotions high. And now you're engaged in argument and conflict. And it's like, boom, I gotcha.
Yeah. And now you're zeroed in on me and I'm getting all the attention, which is like, I'm like harvesting your energy essentially. And that's where I have to remember, and that's a powerful somatic practice too that I love doing. Because I remember someone actually at Ruby Tuesday that I worked with, I would get so mad at people, but I wouldn't stick up for myself. Like when people would do things like what we're talking about. And I remember he was my coworker, and he was like, you know, when you let them make you this angry, like you give all your power away. Seriously. And he's like, I know how powerful you are, but like, look, it all just leaked out of you. Like it fell out of your feet and now you're all flustered. And who is this person? You don't even know their name and you just sold yourself to them for free.
I think there's a balance between like, you can't let everything go. But what I have learned is to not let small things bother me.
Right.
Like
fine line.
You can't like just be a pushover, but like you do build a sense of like, you can call me a cocksucker. You can call me a fucking asshole. And it's like, I don't let it get to me. I don't respond back. I just look at you like, anything. Would you like anything else?
And isn't that powerful though? Like it feels powerful because it's like, I can feel that I'm conserving my energy where I'm like, there's a time where I'm going to say no, because like you just inflicted harm or now you just made other people also like around, or you're going to do this to someone else. But then there's other times where it's like, I'm just going to let this like.
Right. And it's not, and like you do see on their face, they go, oh fuck, like he didn't like respond back with that fury or anger. And obviously not everything. I don't do that with everything.
Right.
I definitely fight fire with fire sometimes, but it's like, I kind of have learned that you do take a little control back with certain small things when you don't give it back.
It's such a metaphor, right? Like I feel that, to be honest, I just want to take a minute to give flowers to people who work behind bars and who work in the service industry to any extent, like having to be face to face with people, because in so many ways it is an adult daycare. Like with what you were just saying, I was thinking about sometimes. And I think that there's this element of like with what you're saying, when people are trying to get a rise out of us or insult, it reminds me of kindergarten when people would call you names or try to chase you around. I mean, this might be my experience because I was like a tiny little girl, you know, but I was a tiny little girl just running around and I remember this kid would always chase me and he would like push me down and then he would put flowers in my lunchbox. And I'm like, that still happens. I'm 35 years old. And it's like, oh, in so many ways there, you know, we can start to see that people are getting older, but at the same time, there's this aspect of people in a bar that I think is very much, especially at Alcohol Into the Mix, like we are talking to the children in them.
So here's the deal. There's so many different types of bars and restaurants, right? There's like the cocktail bars, the fine dining restaurants, there's the diners, the pubs, there's the industry bars, sports bars. But yeah, I mean, you go down into the gas lamp in some of those places and yeah, you do have adult children. You do you meet those people. I'm sitting at a bar at something and I'm talking to a 43-year-old man, but he's really 16 mentally, you know, because he just never grew up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think you just like, I mean, it's not about like shitting. I'm not trying to like shit on people, but it's like part of the industry is learning how to deal with people who struggle from mental health issues and who have dealt with verbal, physical, and sexual abuse growing up, because you do see a lot of that. And that's where I think what I said earlier about having the empathy, but not the tolerance, right?
Right. And that's how I see, whenever I say discernment, that's always like, that's a big word for me. That was like my word of last year. Whenever a new year starts, I'm not big on New Year's resolutions because I feel like I like to move more with the seasons, but the beginning of the year on January first. I always pick one word and I try to think of how I'm embodying that every day. And last year it was discernment. And that's what I think of it as, is like a compassionate level of understanding, but with boundaries held. It's like, I can totally, and sometimes because of what I do, like I feel so privileged to work with people who actually are claiming wanting to heal. Like, I think that is,
it's the first step.
Profound. Yeah. It gives me goosebumps because I think of how much I love my family and certain, elders in my family where I'm like, oh my God, it would be so beautiful to hear them say like, I deserve healing. Like, I'm going to invest in this because I want to feel okay again. Like, I want to feel okay. And so I get to see people in their most vulnerable sometimes. And that's a tremendous privilege. And because of that, when I'm in other places, I still have to remember to hold discernment, because it's like, we're not in a session right now where there's this level of understanding that this stuff is going to come up and it might be directed at me and there's healing happening. It's like, no, I can always understand where someone's coming from. And at the same time, we don't have to take the abuse of it if they're in the world.
Right. It's interesting, the mix of the two. Like, you have an interesting perspective with, you have like the legitimate mental health aspects, and then you see it from a completely different viewpoint from working in restaurants. But it's not, I don't want to make it seem like it's all like that, but it's just like, I think those things stand out for me. You know what I mean? Like, those are the things that like I'm trying really hard to like not take work home with me and to not like let go of things when you make a mistake or when you do something dumb, or is to just have that short memory and to not take those things home. But do you have any questions for me or anything like that?
What do you think about what I do?
Well, I don't really know much about it. That's why I kind of was curious about asking you about it. I think if I guess if people find it helpful, then that's a good thing. It's very like, I don't, that's why I kind of asked you earlier, like who are the people who go see you? Cause I don't think I would ever go looking for those services. Mm-hmm. So I don't really, I don't know. I don't think that I think the yoga stuff is great. I think, if that's what helps people, then then good for them.
Yeah. And I'm even realizing, you came to my class the other day.
I did.
And I'm realizing sometimes I think people like Valkyrie, the space that we're in right now in this studio, and this space though, like beyond these walls, has been so carefully curated to be a space for healing and to be a space for people to walk in the door and be able to come back home to themselves in some way. Like, I think of a lot of the people that teach and hold space here are like, I like to call them shepherds of the Soma. It's like they're helping guide people back home. It's not like we're trying to pick anyone up or show them anything. It's like we're holding the space for them to be able to get what they maybe need but don't know, or what they're looking for but they didn't know they were looking for themselves. And that's like an incredibly personal experience, but I think it can happen very much so in a very shared environment. Yeah. And so I think, to kind of bring it back to you coming to class and you being someone who maybe wouldn't seek out the services, that sounds so funny, or the offerings, I like to call them, the offerings that I offer. I do think that there's something powerful about people being drawn to come in and thinking that yoga is just moving the body, or like, okay, my body hurts because I work on my feet all day. My back hurts from leaning over and moving. My shoulders hurt. Everything hurts because I'm doing that for 8 to 10 hours and then I'm resting. I need to actually get like a good stretch. And a lot of people know yoga as stretching, or they know it as moving their body. And they usually, at least in the beginning, have an understanding that there's a connection to breath. But that is like one aspect of yoga. Yoga is a whole school of thought. It's a way of life. It's very much something that, of course, it wants to help us find ways to move our body, but it can open us up to different levels of meditation, to different levels of consciousness, to different ways of feeling embodied enough to, be strong enough to change our belief systems or be challenged by them, or, find more depth and resonance in them. So I do think that yoga, sometimes if you ask the average person who wasn't looking for something like what we do here, how they found it, they almost didn't even mean to. Like, they didn't mean to find it. It just kind of happened. And then something kind of sparked on, and it's like, okay, I don't know why, but I want to follow that. And I think that that's kind of the mystery school of yoga.
Do you think that like you getting a poetry degree and focusing around poetry and expression has sort of like impacted the way you do things in the yoga studio and the mystery school?
Oh yeah.
So like,
yeah.
What, like, how does that, like, what does getting a poetry degree look like, and how did that impact this stuff?
It's just so funny because I'm like, I have a poetry degree. Like whenever people want to play that game, 2 truths and a lie, and we just meet, I use that one, and no one ever thinks that that's a true one. They're like, you don't have a fucking poetry degree. And I do. I still pay for it. And I decided to study poetry. I mean, it's an English degree, creative writing, poetry concentration, and I got my philosophy minor. And I was planning on teaching poetry at the college level because to me, as someone who's incredibly passionate about social justice and community building and somatic healing, like I would say that everything I do kind of moves from that intersection. Like the way that I live my life, the way that I offer my work, and the way that I show up and teach, that's really where I'm coming from. And so the poetry is like the backbone of all of that. And I think constantly, you know, because my sweet mother, being from the Midwest, and she's so supportive, and she was always like, you're gonna get your poetry degree, like I'm so proud of you. You know, she has my bachelor's hanging up in their house, and I still think like how silly. It didn't really get me a career. And at the same time, I check myself where I'm like, no, that is the basis of how I teach though, because that has understanding poetry. And to be honest, when you study poetry at a degree like that in university, and I got my bachelor's, so a lot of us who were getting our bachelor's at the time, there was a cohort, we would all edit and like constructive, you know, we would do constructive feedback for each other all the time. And we would usually kind of like, there was an aspect of it that was really, really critiquing each other. And I would always get critiqued on, like, I wouldn't do the techniques that they wanted us to do. I loved learning the styles and the rules so that I could break them in writing. And I feel like that really translates into how I teach, because I'm like, this is how society maybe tells us that we should be, but like, what if that doesn't work for us? Like, what if our culture is different, or what if our body is different? Like, let's understand the rules so that we can break out of them. And so I feel like that understanding and that love of poetry, of knowing that it doesn't have to be cookie cutter, is really, that's a foundational aspect for the way I teach. But also on the more logistic side of it, I think the poetry comes through a lot of times when I'm describing what I do, or trying to give a different metaphor. If someone is, you know, for example, asking me what I do at Stout Public House and they have no idea what I do, I've learned a lot of different ways to explain it, I think because of my love for the word, for the verbal word.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to have helped your whole thing of expression. Like when I took your class, when I took your yoga class, the way you like hold yourself here, the way you hold court, you take, you have presence of the room. You're like, this is what we're doing. Like, I think that like having just expression is something that's like very strange. And that's, I think we see a lot of people at the bar who struggle with expression. They don't know how to express themselves in the real world. So they come see us and they have a couple drinks and stuff. And that's been something that was like hard for me. Just doing this podcast was very strange. I think for a lot of people, they don't know how to let that stuff out. And it's like, you got to just take it one step at a time and try different things. And sometimes having a beer helps, you know?
I was just going to say, I think there's sometimes I will see, because, you know, I look at my recovery through the lens of like, okay, what can be medicine for me? I've learned a lot with addiction and witnessing it firsthand, but also, you know, it being in myself of like, if I stop looking at this like it's a disgusting thing that I need to be ashamed of and push away and ignore or try to change, like, and I start looking at it like, how can I offer myself medicine? I feel like there is a difference where I have seen some people not be able to say something, and then, yeah, like you said, and this is not saying it all that alcohol is medicine. I'm just saying when there is an aspect, because I was thinking what you said, I'm like, sometimes that is where then all of a sudden they'll say it in a way that is like, I get it.
Triggers something in our brain. Just it's able to let stuff out.
And then maybe we should pause there after that, but usually we don't. Usually people don't, because that's the thing with alcohol.
Yeah, I think just like I'm just, as I get like self-care and like so like I guess the way I think about like health and wellness is I don't think you can't have abstinence towards these things in life, with whether it's sex, drugs, alcohol, like a little bit of bad behavior, but like if you do focus on like small daily habits of exercise, the foods you eat, the way you self-care, the way you treat your body, the sleep cycles, the phone, the sun, like going out in sun it makes a big difference in life. And I've tried to do the abstinence thing from those things, and it sucks, dude. It's tough. It's really fucking hard. But then you go on the other side where you're going back and forth, like self-control. It's self-control versus abstinence is like a hard thing to fucking, maintain.
Yeah. And I love that you say that, because there's this aspect of, I studied Kundalini yoga, which that lineage, that we could go really deep into that. But for the sake of this conversation, like studying Kundalini yoga, I was studying it, and there was this kind of ingrained idea that like there needed to be a specific diet. And of course, like I respect that the culture where yoga comes from is India. And so a lot of times the diet that is suggested is no meat, especially because one of the pillars or the limbs of yoga is compassion, or we call it ahimsa. So it's like treating all beings equally. So there is this aspect of diet that of course comes in with that, with the culture and with the lifestyle. But then with that, so I was like kind of shaming myself when I was eating meat still. Then I was definitely shaming myself because I was 24. I was drinking like an animal.
Yeah.
I was drinking, I was working 5 nights a week at Cafe 21 and the gas lamp. Like we were getting after it. Not to mention like everything else that comes in with that. And so I really struggled. I felt like the weight of the shame that I was carrying and the guilt of trying to pretend like I would show up to what we would call it sadhana. And I would show up to practice it at 4 a.m. And I was like, do I smell like booze? Or like there was so much, the energy of the shame was so much heavier than actually the hangover. And I started realizing, I think through the 9 months that I studied that, I was like, because I was still so committed to myself and my practice, my yoga practice, and doing it at the same time, that was the first time in my life I'd ever had enough discipline to do the same practice, like 40 days in a row, 180 days in a row. And I would do that no matter what. But over time, I think that started shifting my body chemistry to where I would have like one beer and I would get a little bit nauseous. And I realized at 25, I was like, oh my God, there's medicine in this where if I can incorporate something that does make me feel good and helps me release all that pent up energy, then I don't have as much of a need to like let that energy out through drinking or let that energy out through like whatever other addictions, like you were saying, sex, drugs, other behaviors, like other patterns.
That's how I felt when I'm like strict to my diet and I'm going a couple weeks, a month, whatever it is, and then I do fall off and I go have like a cheeseburger or something like that. Like my body feels so shitty the next day. It makes me be like, no, dude, you don't need this in your life anymore. You don't need this stuff in your body anymore. When you go on those benders drinking or like a big night drinking or something like that, like your body, you wake up and it's like, I don't miss this at all. I don't want this again. Like I don't want this again. In terms of like, you do a lot of work on your social media. I see a lot of the videos you post your poetry. I think it's really cool that you put yourself out there. You just like let everything out. I think that's like, it's really hard for a lot of people to do that. Was there a time where you felt like there was like, you got like rejection from people and people were looking at you like, yo, you're so stupid. This is like, what are you doing? Like
so stupid.
Was that like hard to like, did you experience that at all?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Especially my younger years. I mean, I would share things on social media that I think TikTok is showing a lot of us, some people live online. Like some people share every detail of their life. And of course, when you're showing your life to the public eye, when it's beyond just your family and friends, or even if it is, right? Like I think Facebook is an interesting platform. Like they all have their own flavor, but Facebook, remember, at least I'm not really on it anymore, but I stay on it for my family. But I feel like a lot of people would write diary entries on there. Like, this is what happened. And mostly I feel like Facebook is for family and friends, whereas I feel like TikTok is more of like, there's an algorithm and a For You page. So a lot more people who don't know you personally are seeing it. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions and a lot of things to say. The platform I've mostly worked for or worked with in social media for my business is Instagram. And I have been for the past, 12 years. I would share everything. I would like do the journal entry thing. And this was back before I would do videos. It would just be like a post of a yoga pose. And then it would be like, this is what this brought up. Very vulnerable. And I would have people who knew me and people who didn't tease me for it.
Did it affect you? Did it stop you from doing it? Did you push through? Did you care?
Interestingly enough, I didn't. No,
I kept going.
Yeah, I think it's really discernment, right? Where I'm like, okay, who's telling me this and why? Yeah. Like if someone who knows me and cares about me is telling me their, opinions on what I'm posting, and they have constructive criticism or they have feedback that, I wouldn't even say is negative, but say it's not like it's more critiquing. I'll take that to heart. But if I don't know those people, or if those people are not in my life, I feel like,
or they don't do what you do,
right? Because that was something that I learned, I think, in my mid-20s, where I'm like, oh, this person is criticizing me because I think one of my superpowers, to be honest, is vulnerability. I think that's always been something that I protect fiercely about myself, where, I've had people my whole life tell me that I feel too much, or love too hard, or care too much about certain, people will be like, why do you care so much about this issue? It has nothing to do with you. And I'm like, it's in my bones. Like, it's very deep, and it's something that I will protect. And yeah, do I deplete myself sometimes because of that? Yes. But it's also something that it's part of who I am. And I love to share how I feel about certain things in the form of poetry, especially with what I do, because I think it gives, ultimately, I had to answer your question. This was long-winded again, but to answer your question, I think the feedback let me hold discernment of like, am I oversharing, or is this person doing the same kind of thing as I'm doing? Or is this person saying this because they're, they want me to do better? Or is this person just criticizing me because I'm making them uncomfortable, because I'm being vulnerable, and that's pushing
exactly what it fucking is. That's exactly what it fucking is.
And I can have compassion for that too, where I'm like, I went through a phase where I was like getting really angry about it. I'm like, how dare you try to silence me what are you like, how do you feel about these things, or what do you want to say? And it's like, oh, you're just trying to attack my character.
They don't have the courage to do it, so they attack those who are more mentally strong or have the confidence to do it, is what it becomes. But it is kind of weird, because we're in this new wave of like social media and like the ability to take your voice and send it out across somebody on your phone, and some kid in India reads it, or some like your family and across the country reads it, where it's like our parents' generation didn't have that. Right. I remember when I was a senior in high school, before graduation, we had like a class meeting where they're like, you need to be careful with what you put on your Facebook. You need to be careful. There's professionalism.
In school, you did?
Yeah, they took our whole senior class, and like we had like a meeting in the big auditorium, and they were like, this is what happens if you put too much out there on social media. You know, a job will see it, a college will see it. You might not get, but it's like I'm now entered that world of online sharing. And it's like you're just stepping out into the ocean. And it's kind of like there isn't really a playbook to this, because like, I don't know, I have a job, where all of my customers follow me on social media. So it's this really weird thing where I am putting my personal thoughts and feelings and emotions into this public space, where we work in sales, and you got to be careful with that whether it's politics, whether it's social issues, whether it's everything. People they see us have safe spaces. Imagine if you saw your therapist go out on social media and had totally different views as you. How that would make you feel. You know what I mean?
Sometimes I'm like, because I follow this therapist who's always speaking up about social justice. And to be honest, I love it. I'm like,
okay,
look
well,
at you. But and there
you have
are
a
some
level
things,
head about yourself. You're
yeah, there can be, I've had definitely, because I've posted where it's like, something will be going on and I'm like, on a human rights level, this is like very dangerous. And I do see it as being like within my line of work because I work in mental health. If I'm not talking about how, systemic oppression is affecting the people I'm working with, then I'm like ignoring a huge part of why they're even coming to see me. It's like we have to address where it's coming from. And usually it's coming from somewhere other than just, of course, their own personal experience. And so I have definitely had people where I'll speak about something. And I've learned a lot from that. I've learned a lot about feedback because there was times like 5-6 years ago where I would be like, I'm just going to get on here and I'm just going to say what I think and feel. And I'm like, okay, but at the end of the day, that's where I have to check myself every time now. I'm like, why am I saying this? Am I just saying this because I think this is silly and I want to like,
because you're in a mood.
Right. And I'm like, that's not where I want to be. Because I do think there's a level of professionality where I can like speak up on issues and where I stand. And also I think if there's something I'm speaking out about, like if I'm seeing harm done in my community and I'm speaking about it, I don't want to just say it like, this is happening, stupid. I want to be like, this is happening and like, why? And how can we talk to each other about it? Like, that's where I'm trying to come from, especially in the last year or two, because I'm like, I got a little too heightened.
Yep, you got to check yourself sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for the people who were like, you're also adding to the problem because you're just getting on the mic and saying what you think. Like, what's the resolution?
Why?
You just want to call out the
harm. Who are you? Like, do you? It ends up being.
Yeah, like, what am I better than? Even though I see the problem and I'm contributing to the problem because I'm not doing anything besides talking shit about it.
I try not to talk about things that I'm not educated on. I think that's like a big thing is like everyone's entitled to their opinion. You can have an opinion on something. It doesn't make you right. Mm-hmm. But I think that like what we do is where it's so easily accessible when you see these people go in this like manic state and they get on their phones. And then I'm talking more like celebrities, people with big followings and stuff like that. But even people you went to high school with, people who work in the city. I follow a bunch of bartenders on social media and I see what they're constantly posting. And I'm just like, you can almost like, I'm at a point where you can tell the level of their mental health and wellness based on like what they put out on their social media. Mm-hmm. And that's why I try to be really cautious about what I say and do. But also like, I'm a big believer of freedom of expression and say what you say, talk how you feel. But I think that like with me doing this and setting myself up long term, there's things that I'm like afraid and stances I'm afraid to take because I'm like, what I realize about myself is every few months, 6 months, I grow and my thoughts on things change.
Right.
And so the thought process from me is like, well, don't say that now because because what you thought 6 months ago, what I wanted to come on here on this podcast and talk about, I'm so fucking glad I didn't. Right. But then it's also like, if I just keep having that mindset, I'm never going to start this. I'm never going to say anything. I'm always going to be afraid to share. So it's almost like just give yourself some grace. Speak how you feel without trying to be a fucking asshole and totally like judging people.
Right.
If you say, if you could try to like move with empathy and be inquisitive towards things and maybe like take a stance of neutrality as opposed to being like, I'm going to fucking hammer this side of this topic for the rest of my existence. Like that's hard to do because then you're just constantly defending yourself. You're going to like, I see people who do that and they're in this state of defense so often. Attack, defense. Like
the security guard thing I was telling you about, the metaphor of like, if you're the security guard and that's like your ego being puffed up, then at what point do you need to like, when's your shift over? Because now like everything you're talking about is going to feel like an attack. And I've fucking been there. Like I have been there where I get really passionate about certain things that are happening in our world. And of course, like, again, like you and I have talked about this where it's like my job definitely is political because it's impacted my loved ones, my clients and my community and myself are impacted by policies and the government. But it's also like if I'm being in defense all the time, then again, I'm like, I've had to step back and be like, that is also exactly what I'm trying to dismantle or like unpack. I am also putting more bricks on that and like creating more separation between me and these people. And I have to check myself because it's easy to get really heightened And to speak to what you said, I love what you said, because actually like for you, with you doing like your self-reflections, I think that would be like a perfect time if there was something that you ended up saying, like that you did, for example, like even us, like if you got really passionate about, but then 6 months down the road, you're like, actually, I reflected on that and like I changed my mind. I think that is like my favorite mantra lately is that you can teach old dogs new tricks. I have to tell that to my brain. I'm like, we've believed this for a long time, but the more I'm learning, the less I'm seeing that's true. Or like, where did that belief come from? Because like my parents and my experience didn't teach me that. So if I just believe that, then am I being a sheep to this experience? Like, what do I actually think now that I'm learning more about it? And I think there's nothing that I could maybe call growth as much as someone saying, I really was like loud about this and I've learned this now. And I've had to do that to people that didn't appreciate it, that they were like, well, you were loud then and I don't want to hear what you have to say now. I'm like, that's fair. I don't need you to forgive me. I just want you to know I see it now.
I think one thing, I think one of our first conversations where we started to like build more of a friendship as less of coworker professional. I don't know if you remember this. It was like a year and a half ago. And we sat down. You were there. I had worked and gotten off, or you were there drinking or something. And it was, the election's going on. And I think I am so used to like, I see how people get around politics at the bar. So I don't really talk. I don't talk. I listen. And I think we were sitting, one of the first few times we'd ever sat down next to each other having a drink. And I said something to you that went against your, stance and everything. And I kind of leaned back expecting to be like, all right, I'm like, here we go. What did I just do? And
you physically leaned back.
I've like emotionally, I'm like, all right, I just fucking, I went against the grain. And you like, kind of like you didn't react. You just were like, you took a stance of, let me try to think about and process what you said. And this is how I think about things, instead of just being this reactionary, you think differently than me, so go fuck yourself. Because that exists so much. And I don't even just mean with me, but with everyone I see, is that people take these stances of, you don't think like me, so you're a terrible human being. And so I thought like you didn't do that. You were able to have a rational conversation with someone with a difference of opinion. And I think from there, we've sort of built more of a friendship together where we get coffee every once in a while and can talk about real issues without there being drama or conflict or like, who the fuck are you? So you'd be surprised at how few people are like that, at least in my settings. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I think it's important to take that stance of just listen and try to understand the people with differences of views.
Yeah. Cause I feel like cause I sit, right. And usually quarterly, like when the seasons change, I usually move with the season. So like, for example, spring equinox is like New Year's for me. And then when summer equinox comes, that's another time for me to like reevaluate, like clear my space, reset, and then write and get really clear with like, and I create this mind map on my altar, and I have my name in the middle. I put like the people that I want to see and spend time with up on top, my goals for the next 3 months, things that I want to commit to, like, my own kind of self-care practices. And then on the left side, I put beliefs and morals. And that I always notice, like I'll keep them after so I do this 4 times a year. And I always do beliefs and morals. So I write down like my top, 10 to 20 beliefs and morals that I live by that are like non-negotiables to me. And so I love what you just said. And thank you for that, because there's a lot of times where I have not been graceful in that. Like with what you just said, I was even kind of surprised to hear that about myself.
Oh, no, I think that to be very true, at least in my experiences. But
yeah. And that's the thing, like you and I are in the same community. So it's like I've had really hard conversations with my parents, my mom especially. I love her so much because, I love both my parents very much. But my mom, she'll really be like, I don't agree. But then she'll be like, why? And I love that we've had that, because you're right. Like when you were saying earlier, our parents and like a lot of even people that are in our friend groups are like Gen X or boomers. And we grew, and maybe this is 'cause it's us, but I'm like, millennials and boomers have the biggest generational gap ever because of technology.
Seriously.
I would argue, I
yeah.
was not alive 200 years ago. I was not alive, or maybe, well, that's one of my belief systems. Maybe we were. But I think like my mom didn't have the access to Google anything she wanted. So when I get really fired up or like I have researched a topic intensely, sometimes she's like, whoa, like let's hang on. Like, where'd you hear that? Like she wants to understand why, which I actually love so much, because it's like, it reminds me of that. Have you ever seen that graffiti? It became a meme and it said, question everything. And then someone wrote, why? And I love that, because it's like, if at the end of the day, if I'm just ego masturbating and I want to be right, then it's just putting a period on every sentence, instead of if what my beliefs and morals. That's what I was going to tell you. Every time I do that mind map, the first one is old dogs can learn new tricks. Like that's my biggest one in the past year, probably, because I want to remind myself that if I'm learning something, and community and conflict resolution are two big, important pillars of my belief system, then me being right is ultimately not as important. I can be passionate about what I believe in, especially when someone's inflicting harm and I want to use my voice. But if you and I are talking and you're not saying you're wrong, or there's like opportunity to understand each other, then why am I going to be in defense, like throwing fists at you just so that I can feel bigger?
That's what it is. It's ego and the self. I'm right and you're wrong, and there's a power. I just proved you wrong. Mm-hmm. And I just thought back to like a conversation I had with a customer a long time ago where he looked at me and said, "You're wrong," and I was like, "That's what it is."
You did?
Yeah. Like anyways, but no, I didn't. The customer looked at me and said, "You're wrong," and like and it's like, that's what it becomes. These so many conversations about these heated issue. It's about like winning and losing. And it's like childish, like, and that's why I see those debates online with the political. I see these people. I think just from like my perspective on doing this platform of like creating content, I never want to get into the politics. I have no interest in arguing politics. And if you do, that's fine. I'm not saying it's wrong to do that. I think it's good to be educated and to understand what's going on. But like, I don't think, like, who wins out of you and me sitting here talking about political issues?
Well, are you talking about, what's that? It's like
talking about it. There's so many things. There's like so many. I mean,
and I think there's a difference of the platforms, right? Because I'm like, whoa, you're even like, I can feel the group consciousness fear factor of like, it's almost like when people, how we all love watching sports to a certain extent, or like, I remember I dated this person who was like, he's like, I don't care who they are, because he would do MMA and he would fight. And so he's like, it doesn't matter who the person is, or how old they are, or what culture they are, or where they come from. Like, if there's a fight happening, everyone stops and watches. And I remember I wanted to be like,
car crash.
That's not true. But it's like, that is like, think of how much people get passionate about watching sports and watching this level of like, there's a primal part of us that does that. And with me, I see like I said, a big part of my job is I do love talking about politics, because I love talking about and understanding policies and what's being enforced, because a lot of the people that I love in my life and that I work with are being impacted by a lot of policy changes right now. So I always want to be educated, and I always want to be able to be able to know what I can do in order to prevent harm from happening. And at the same time, I don't want to watch people debate about something that has been debated for a very long time. It's like, at what point are you all just repeating the same points? And what are we going to do about what we learn then? Or are we just throwing, it reminds me of like it's one thing to talk shit. And I love talking shit sometimes, like when,
You're with your friends.
and we need to
Talk some
vent
shit.
or we need to like get something out or like
talk shit to your bartender.
me and Eileen at the end of the night, it's like maybe 10 minutes of whatever. Okay. But then it's also like, now we feel better or okay, got that out. It's not going to go anywhere. But there's a difference between like, I'm getting in this argument or this dialogue, we'll say, because I want to get in the dirt and plant seeds with this person versus like getting in the dialogue to just like pick up shit and throw it at each other. That is what I see a lot of. And I'm like, it's cool if we want to unpack a lot of things and like disagree, but then what are we going to do with that? I guess
a big part of this platform is about growth and like how do we grow, not how do we blame, not how do we point fingers. It's like how do I
just leaving a mess or did we create a garden?
It's a great metaphor. Like how do I want to be better, like I'm trying to like, and that's why I wanted to connect with you because that's what I feel about you too, is like you're trying to be better and grow and you're trying to have those around you grow, and like I'm looking to connect with people who are like-minded like that, and like we might be in different like worlds and have different ways we view about the world, but it's like I don't want to sit exactly like I don't want to just throw shit. I don't want to sit in my own shit. I'm trying to like clean the shit off and like do my own thing.
Trying to clean the shit actually. Yeah, because otherwise it's just a mess and then no one cleans it when they walk away, and then it's like then it leaves more of a mess like that no one can step on. And I'm like, that's one of my biggest values too, is within a community like Stout is a community in a regard. Like there's a sense of community there. There's regulars there. There's the staff that's some of us have been there for, over a
17
decade.
17 years.
Yeah. Shout out Mark and Dave. And there's this aspect of, I think a lot of people have this understanding that community needs to mean that we all get along and that we all want to always be around each other and we're all always on the same side. And it's like, no, a community means that there is a sense of togetherness and taking care of each other, even or especially if we don't agree and if we don't like something that happened within that. And I think about that a lot. I feel like people really used to, and something I love and think is so sweet about the Midwest is even when people don't really like their neighbors or their neighbors annoy the shit out of them, like they would still be outside like defending them if something happened. And I think that's community to me. It's like you don't need to agree with this person or even spend time alone with this person or want to like get closer to this person, but you care.
Yeah.
And we're not just leaving shit in front of the door. Like we're all responsible for
we're a community. You gotta,
cleaning it. I got a little too deep into the garden metaphor.
It's good. Good metaphor. Do you have, what else do you want to talk about on the podcast?
Yeah, because I was going to ask you what you think, like for you at this point in your life right now, you think is a good balance. Like what do you feel as someone who's in the service industry full time? How do you feel like you are able to best maintain a sense of mental health, like keeping a balance of that?
Personally, it's by not consuming alcohol. That's the starting point. If I can focus on those like elements of not drinking alcohol.
Oh yeah. What are the 5? You just told me the other day. Remember, you're like, if you can do these 5 things, you're already on a running start.
I think not consuming alcohol, having a clean diet, exercise, sleep, and like going out into the sun and just being like outside. Mm-hmm. Like if for me personally, if I can achieve those things on a weekly basis, maybe not every single day, but like really push towards the discipline with those 5 things, my life fucking excels. Like I excel in all my things. Mm-hmm. But when and it's tough, the sleep thing's tough because the bar closes at 2 a.m. You get late nights. The diet, I try to bring my little things. Like I bring more than half the shifts, I bring my own food to work that I've either cooked or I've gotten out and it's leftovers. I've had this thing when I started working in a restaurant when I was 15 years old at a Vietnamese restaurant. When you eat Vietnamese food 4 or 5 times a week, like your stomach kind of fucks you up a little bit.
In a good way or?
No, in a bad way.
What were you eating?
It's just like the spices, the noodles, so I would go next door to, but anyways, like just like clean food, you know, if you can get exercise 4 or 5 times a week, being outside with my, you know, my animals, like those things really help me fucking grow. And then like there's the creative stuff, which I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to take care of my body and the gym and like be physically and mentally fit. With the discipline, I'm reading, you know, I try to read like a book a month. And then there's the creative aspects with this whole podcast, whether it's the recording of these episodes, it's the editing, it's prospecting, dude. Prospecting for this podcast is like it's a big part of it, you know, like getting you to sit in that chair is really challenging. It is.
It took us a while. It took us a while for us to get here.
It is. And you know, it's like the growth of this thing is really important to me. And it's something that I really enjoy doing. I think there's a lot of power in doing these things. And that's why I've been trying to express to you, like, I think you should dive into this just based on everything you do and everything I see with your poetry and your social media and your yoga. Like if you had this, you could crush it, you know?
Yeah, I've been wanting to, because I think something that you know, because for a while, but I think this is a mental block for a lot of us who are artists and a lot of us who care about mental health is I'll be like, what's one more voice? Like, what's one more voice?
Oh, no.
I used to say,
what do you mean?
I don't say that now, but I would say that all the time because I've had people say, you know, like, why don't you start a podcast on this thing? Especially because, and to be honest, like I was teaching the other day and I teach all different kinds of demographics, but one of the demographics that I teach is people who, you know, we do movement in chairs, and then there's a lot that goes into that. We need a lot of support, and the attention is hard to hold, and there can be a lot of, you know, things can get triggered. And I was teaching and I was realizing I was like trying to make sound, because sometimes like in somatics, a big way of moving energy, or like we were talking about people who have a hard time expressing, is like getting them to make sound, because a lot of people don't really ever make sound. And that's something like the 2 first languages we know how to do are emoting and making sound. Like we scream or cry if we're tired or hungry. We coo if we feel safe. Like that's, you know, and I was making sound in front of all these people, and I was really like, no one was making sound with me. And that's what I was trying to get them to do. And I was like, I never, ever thought my job would get, like, I never thought this would be something that I do, because it's like a nightmare. I do, it's not anymore, because I realized the bigger why of why I'm doing it. I do it because it's giving people their power back. I do it because it's helping people get into their body. But to be honest, the idea of being spotlit, or like being the one talking and other people listening, that was always a huge, I had so much resistance to that before we started. Yeah, but you grew
though, but that's how you felt when you were younger, and now that doesn't faze you.
Yeah, because now it's almost like,
you just gained confidence.
It's not about the security guard, you know? I'm like, they're not all looking at me because I'm presenting something to them, and like, I really don't even think about myself much anymore. I'm aware that like people are looking at me when I'm teaching, and to be honest, there's so many times I've taught an entire class where someone's staring at me the whole time, and
it's weird.
How
do bartenders feel?
Oh, it used to scare the shit. I was like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable. Like I am so self-conscious. Like, is there some, like just the way they would look at me? And now it's so, I can tell normal. That there's been growth, because I just am like,
it happens so much, you just don't care. I remember the first time I got behind a busy New York City sports bar. A sports bar is different because everyone just stares up at the TVs, right? In a bar, everyone's talking, everyone's kind of, but I remember like I started it was a playoff Buffalo Bills game, and it was like a packed house. Boom, everyone, I had like a panic attack. But like
were you level with the TVs?
Right behind my head.
Oh,
right
so
behind my head.
It felt like they were looking.
So it's just like these eyes, and you're just like, holy. But it's like, and like you feel that bartending, and even like in the shifts this week, people will just they go like this, and they watch you walk back, and then that weird smile they fucking do, like, and I'm just like, whatever, I don't care anymore. Do you want something to drink? Yes, no, good. Keep it moving. But you do get over yourself, and totally. I think that like just what you said about having it's just one voice. I don't do this podcast because I think I'm going to change the culture of bartending or mental health. Because that's I think that's almost like too big of it. Maybe that's like an ego way of thinking about it. But it's like
security guard.
I do this stuff for myself. Like I think you put out, I don't know, but it sounds like you put everything out I see on social media for you. And if other people connect with that, that's like a good thing. But like I'm not going out there to be like, my customers want this, I'm going to give them this. How I approach this is like, this is what I like to do. Let's start with, I love these other podcast hosts, these other musicians, artists, comedians. And I'm like, I gain so much value from them. I think I can do that. And I don't take the stance of, I'm going to sell out arenas and do this podcast on stage or something. It's just like, I think it's like good. When you put your own voice out there, other like-minded people connect. So that's why I do this stuff. It's just the podcast, we're doing the same thing, you and I, but it's just, this is the platform and the voice and to be able to reach more people and to have longer discussions is what this is. We are doing the same shit, the same concepts. But I just thought that this would be kind of it's a tool. This is a tool. It's a marketing tool. If you want to grow, and that's why I'm talking to you about growth in your business. Like, what are your plans for down the road? Like my plan down the road is like to be able to monetize this and to be able to grow it and to be able to have better guests. And maybe I have an editor or somebody who's helping me out with the lights and camera and the audio and things like that. But I think it's like just the platform. It's the expression that we're in. We're both in the field of expression. Yeah. And our topics are different, but I like it. It's fun. It's so much. There's like, I always thought there was only so much creativity. Like how you like, I don't want to talk about this topic because then I won't be able to talk about it down the road or there's not enough. No, there's an ocean of creativity. We're just sand grains thrown in the sands. You'll always be able to find more stuff to talk about, more things to podcast about, more things to pick your brain. But that's where your creativity comes into play. And that's what I think makes like good stand-up comedians or good artists is their antenna and their observation to the stimulus and world around to be able to tap into that and to have that inquisitive mindset of like, let me go find out more about that. Ooh, that's shiny. Well, let me see what's behind that rock, you know? And I think it's a good thing to do, and that's why I like to take the open-mindedness opinion and to stay neutral because as you get older you realize you don't know as much as you think you do, and to sit here and to take one stance early on I think is like a little naive, so it's a good learning lesson.
Yeah, the older I get, the less I know. I feel like the more I learn, the less I know. I'm like, wow, it can be, and I love that, like the flexibility of change. And you're right, that's where creativity comes into, if we can see it that way of like, I'm getting, like the way I'm seeing this is changing, like my perspective is changing, what's being born from that. Like if we can be honest with that, a lot of creative spark comes from that. And I think that's something that I'm wanting to lean into more this year as well, of like remembering the artist in me and not just identifying so strongly with the facilitator in me, especially because what I do, I feel like it's rare that my job is also something that I'm so passionate about, even outside of like it bringing me income. So I have to be careful with like identifying so deeply with that I lose sight of the other things. Like I was telling you about with the gardening, and like my friend and I are doing a trade where we're teaching each other different aspects of gardening and working with the earth. And I'm like, this is a passion project. And then I'll find myself getting frustrated because I don't have enough time for it. And it's like, no, this is what is important. This is what is important, especially because it's not something that I have to clock in for or something that I have to do a certain way. It's like, this is the time I get to remember who I am. And that's where creative energy comes back. Because we're not
getting paid. There's not a transaction. It's just like, this is who you are. And, I was just thinking about like, you said as you get older, you grow and you learn about what you don't know. And I think about that like in restaurants. Like I always look at like when you're younger, you're like, why is my boss such an asshole? Or why is that bartender such an asshole? I remember when I was in Jersey, I went to a bar and I was sitting there next to a guy and he's like, this bartender here, she sucks. She's a bitch. She never buys me drinks, all this stuff, giving her a bad rap. And she was in a bad mood and all that stuff. And now that I've gone through it, like for all the years, I realized that, like I know what it's like to be that pissed off bartender who's so used to people trying to get me to give him free shit. and I'm like, shut the fuck up. No, you know, I know what it's like to be looking back, that pissed off bartender in a bad mood who's who all the customers are looking for deals, and like, so it's like now I look at like, oh, why is our, you know, if you have a boss who sucks, or if you have somebody who's like, I don't think like I think it's challenging to put on that smile, happy face every day you go in to work when you work in a restaurant, and people do it. And I give them a lot of credit for it, but it's challenging, you know, with all the shit you got to deal with, the chaos and the stress and the things breaking and everything like that. Like I'm looking at like, you know, our owners and bosses. I'm like, wow, they're actually like for everything that they do and the multiple jobs they have. I'm like, I don't know how they do it sometimes. I think they've been doing this for decades. Yeah. It's like kind of crazy. Like, I don't think I'd be as nice and kind as that, you know what I mean? Right. It's like, holy crap, with like, you know, the people that we deal with on a day-to-day basis and stuff like that. But you gain, I think when you go through those things, you kind of gain a little empathy because you see how shitty people's lives are. And it kind of like when you do witness all that bullshit, it kind of calms you, mellows you down a little. It can, I guess. Mm-hmm. It can make you stubborn and more angry, but it also like, it's like your spectrum of feelings and emotions and understanding of people widens. You can know how to get really fucking angry and lose your mind, but you also like have an appreciation, understanding, and calmness to you as well. So I'm like, how am I going to be thinking in 5 years from now? Like, fuck, dude, you know? Like, what's that going to be like?
Yeah, because, oh my God, I couldn't imagine. Sometimes I really, like a practice I have that I really love is like I do video journals to myself. So like if I'm really stuck on a loop of something, like if I cannot fucking figure something out, like say there's like something coming up where I'm really bothered that, like, just as a silly example, like, okay, my sister and I are arguing about what to do for a family event. And like, I just don't know why her idea is bothering me so much. I'll take a video journal and I talk to myself about what I'm feeling. But I'll talk to myself kind of like using we, us pronouns. I'll be like, hey, it's us, like me, like the different ages of me. And I've been doing that since 2019. So I'll look back at them. And it's so good though. It's like, there's like this really powerful, because I'll look back and remember what we were talking about earlier, how sometimes like your body, even like 5 years from now, but like say April in 2030, we might be like experiencing similar themes, or like we might be moving through things that we're probably moving through now. We'll be better at them, but they might be presenting themselves in different ways because of like the seasons or the cycles of life. But I'll look back and I'll be like, whoa, this is what I was going through in my video journal, because I keep them all in like one album.
It's like a journal, video journal, handwritten. It's good.
Right.
It's good.
And I think there's something about like having to look at myself. Like there's an aspect to it of this where like there's a level of the camera's rolling and we're talking and we know that there's an audience. There's not an audience for the video journals.
It's a little narcissistic, but that's okay.
Totally.
But we've grown up in that environment with phones and everything like that. It's like today's normality for people is like social media, phones, selfies. Like that's like what we've been given by the last generation. So fuck you guys for doing that.
And I kind of like, I feel like it does, there's this aspect of it too, like with the video journals that I think is important, because I feel like it brings you a level of self-awareness that can bring you out of like the more like what you're saying with it being narcissistic and like, look at me. It's more of like, I'm not doing it there was actually one time last year that I was like so triggered by a situation that was happening in my friend group. And I was like, could not figure out how I wanted to address it or what I wanted to say, or like, it was like eating at me emotionally. It was like all I could think about. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm going to turn on the video, because no one sees these. I would actually be so mortified. I've told a friend, like, if anything ever happens, like she can watch them, like if I die, but no one sees them. I've never posted them. They're like mostly for me to watch, because I'll hear and see the way that I'm talking, and I can tell when I'm lying to myself by the way I'm like, I'll stop looking at myself, or I'll start like trying to make up a story. So basically what you're saying is you're like looking at your own verbal tells and things. Yeah, because I'm like, I can lie. I can not lie, but I can hide a certain amount of truths from you about me. I can't do that to myself.
Have you ever, Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power?
No, I think you've told me about this.
You should read that book. It's all,
Yeah, you love that book.
Well, I learned a lot from that book.
Does he do video journals?
No, it's a lot about like, I've related a lot what we go through in restaurants on how the power dynamics of business and the economy and the world and family and relationships and how it's status, not status symbols, but hierarchies. It's a lot of that. And I think,
like understanding them.
Just understand. It's like the manipulation that goes on in the world and seeing what's really in front of us. Yeah. And I think you and me, I think you are so kind and you're so generous to people and you always look for the good in people. But the difference between me is I look for the truth in people. And I want to know what's really there. And what I've learned is that there is a lot of manipulation in the world. There's a lot of manipulation working in restaurants. There's a lot of the customers, the male and female relationship. And I think that some of our conversations together, I'm trying to give you a heads up of maybe what's going on, that maybe some things you don't always see.
Yeah. And then afterwards I'm like, damn it.
And I think that just knowing what's real, and it's knowing what people's real intentions are, I think is important because they're not always good.
Right. And that's something that I notice, my mania gets I get very manic after working in the service industry. There was a time recently where Taylor and our coworker Eileen were alone and there was 10,000 people in the bar and I was going to go to bed. It was a Saturday. And I remember I was oh, I'm off tonight. It was 5 p.m. and I got in bed and he texted me and he's like, hey, you need to come to Stout. And I was like, fuck that. And I remember I told you, I was like, no, silenced it. And then he called me and I was like, fuck. And it was a regular. And he was like, you need help. And I was like, I can't go back to sleep, knowing that they're struggling. But I go in and then we get our asses handed to us for 4 or 5 hours. And afterwards I'm all because you exert so much energy, afterwards you're just I just want, I'm almost high off of it. And then it's hard because my intentions are good, right? I'm not there to manipulate anyone. But there's also and I'm just saying in spaces like this, sometimes I forget that not everyone thinks that way. I forget that there needs to be a level of discernment.
What do you mean you're not there to manipulate everybody? What do you
mean? How
that?
You're saying you look for the truth. I look for the kindness.
Yeah.
Because I think we see, you look for the truth. I'm seeing the kindness, but there's this other aspect of me where I'm because that's where I'm coming from. Sometimes I miss the deeper layers of what is not kind there. And that exchange is what I'm saying. And it's especially different if I'm in a elevated state, just worked a lot or exerted a lot of energy. It's hard for me to hold that discernment of what is actually being communicated and happening.
You're going with the flow. You're rolling. You're on one. And that's what I mean. Look, I see a lot of men and women who more, I guess, men too, but women who just and they you know what you do to cope with that? You drink. And that's what happens is that when you're in this, what you see, you talk to a lot of these people. And that's why I think it's important if you want to be a lifer in this industry to slow down on the product. Seriously, because the product that we sell, that's what I'm saying, because what you're saying is so true, is we are in these stressful states. And when you have when you have access to alcohol right there in front of you, it's just, why not? But then that becomes the norm. And then it's you do that for 5 years, you do that for 15 years, and you're a full-blown raging alcoholic. And
it happens so quick. And you don't notice till you look back.
Yeah. So that's why that's the concept. And it's I've been there. I've experienced that. And a lot of people have. And it's how do we how do we have that give and take of the ability to say no, the ability to decompress, the ability to take care of ourselves and to these are real things that so many people go through in this industry. And it's that's the one of the core values of what I'm trying to talk about. And plan and discipline, the ability to say no, consistency, self-care. And look, we're not police officers who are dodging bullets. We're not soldiers on the front line. So I'm not trying to overkill it, but it's look, dude, what kind of life do you want to live? You know what I mean? Do you want to be physically and mentally happy in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s? or, a lot of people just say, I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time. And I can't judge those people, but I want to be here for a long time. And at the rate I'm going, that's not going to happen. So like, I got to make these changes, and you got to have those honest, real conversations with yourself.
Yeah.
Like when I went and saw that chiropractor the other day, my back's kind of fucked, and I was avoiding it.
So he told you.
Was
that validating?
It was shameful because I was avoiding it for so long.
To get an x-ray?
Just to like get my back looked at. And when I finally did, he's like, you need fucking work, dude.
Did he take x-rays?
He did.
So there, yeah.
And it's like,
it is.
And it's like, fuck, man. Like, why didn't I address this so long ago? Why didn't I take care of, do the self-care thing and the honest conversations down like long time ago? And so, that's so many other people talk to me about this kind of stuff. And it's like, we gotta be good members of this community and promote healthy things in this community and like try to be there for one each other. It's such a cutthroat industry. It's such a selfish, I'm taking care of myself and fuck you guys. That's how I experience. I don't mean they're bad people, but it's like, let's all go down the rabbit hole in the world of the tornado of chaos together. And I don't fucking want that. I love this industry.
Mean being in the service industry, like we self-sabotage together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, I want to like, and I do love this industry. I love the people. I have customers from this industry who are great. I have coworkers who are great and stuff like that. But it's like, yo, man, I am going to put myself first, and then you kind of leave the pack a little bit when you do that. When you don't
go against the grain.
When you go against the grain, the pack goes, well, fuck this guy,
Which is, and I think a lot of us, it's definitely part of the culture. And then I think those of us who are getting, you and I are still pretty young, but after a while, your body's like, I can't. And there's such a big difference, right, between people who are actively sober and still in the industry and people who are not. There's a huge difference.
You see these veterans, like the guys that we work with, they're not, ripping shots at work.
No, that's why I love working there when I do, because it's like the
They did, not anymore.
Yeah. Have families. Not that really also, that some people have families and are still doing that. But that's why I appreciate it there, because there's not that element of, because it's when you're in a different brainwave state, because you all did just go through something really intense together, and then everyone's going to the same bar together afterwards. There's a different level of, you don't really hold discernment, or you're like, fuck it, just today. And the next thing you know, it's been just today for 5 years. Just one more time, just today, just one more. Just one more.
And you've slept with half your coworkers, and
half the
maybe,
kitchen.
Yeah, maybe you had a kid with a kid with one of them. And maybe you got fired from one of your jobs because you slept with your coworkers, and now HR is calling you saying, what the fuck happens? Or maybe
HR.
Or maybe one of the hostess shows up at the door and calls the bar and says, your employee knocked me up and he's not paying child support, and I'm going to sue you in the restaurant if
Did this happen to you?
And like things like you see, or maybe
I'm like, this is
or maybe
personal.
you're out at a party with your whole staff, and two of the people get in a fist fight at the after party and stuff like that. It's just like the dysfunction is all over the place.
Yeah, and that becomes a bond. It's like we all self-sabotage together, and that is our bond. Like, it's funny together the next morning to all joke about how much we fucked everything up. Like, that was so the culture in my early 20s when I first moved here. And I was in the service industry.
How do we get out of that? How do you remove yourself from that cycle?
I had to leave that bar. It was like, I had to. And it's interesting because I did start noticing, I was like, wow, these are like my best friends. And I don't think I talk to a single one of them anymore. And I'm known for, when I have friends, they're usually in my life for a long time. And I remember being so close to them. I wasn't really even hanging out with anyone else because we were always all together. We would work together 5 nights a week, and we went out together, like at least 4 of them. And I was like, this is getting to the point where I'm so deeply embedded in this that I chose actually my career. I was like, I was flying to Florida. Oh, I am friends with one of them still. One of them, she was the one who found this breathwork training. She's like, let's go. And we went to Miami to do it, and I put in my 2 weeks, so I left after that. But It's scary to think about what would have happened because it was just so, we're still young. We're still having fun. And it's like, at what point is the party over? Like, at what point is it not fun? And it's really tragic. It's only fun and funny because we're all hungover and still kind of drunk laughing. But if I'm alone, it's not funny.
I think the answer to that is like when you don't have anybody else, like that's what becomes your family and your community. So that's tough. When you're by yourself and that's all you have, it's like, fuck, man. It's either this or loneliness, you know? So that's why I think your coming to see you and doing your yoga classes and creating that community is really important and helpful.
Yeah, because I love like the people here. 4 of my closest friends that I consider sisters to me teach here. And I mean, I think I've told you about them. Like, we did group breath work together once a month for years with our mentor. He would come breathe us, and it was like the best group therapy I've ever been a part of, the 5 of us. There would be others in and out. And of course there's other people in this community that I love, but those 4 people are so important to me. They have been the ones who, the owner of this yoga studio, Agneta, introduced me to breath work. She said, have you ever tried breath work? Because I was teaching at a studio that she managed. And I was like, I already do yoga. I already do breath work. Like, so pretentious. I was so fucking humbled. I was like, went in to do the breathwork experience, and my hands, like, it was like the accumulation of all the asthma attacks I had ever had finally begging to be like released from my body. So my diaphragm had gotten so contracted that I lost complete feeling in my body, and my arms went like this. Someone had to come over and roll me on my belly, and I was like crying and screaming like I had never have. And there was probably like 30 of us in the room. Actually, the guy who was next to me did this tattoo after that. And I remember afterwards, she was like, what'd you think? And like that alone, like, I mean, and that's my job now. Because she said, have you ever tried breathwork? You should come. And I think there's that is something that within those 4 people that I'm very close to, those people are people that I don't have to see for weeks on end to know how close they are to me, and to know that I have community, and to know, and like friendships like that and community like that has taught me that I am not alone, and given me also permission and safety to feel like I'm actually choosing to be alone because I'm investing in my energy. Like, I'm choosing to study tonight, or I'm choosing to crochet tonight. I'm choosing to not be social this week because I have secure, safe friendships like that. That's community to me. And unfortunately, for me personally, I could never find that in the service industry.
It's tough for me too, because, you know, I'm trying to find people who are into this kind of creative stuff, and there's a lot of creative people, but I have not, you know, I put the word out. I do say, hey, come, like, if you want to do this, like, let me know. But it's tough. Yeah. I mean, like, what do I like put, like a Facebook ad out? Do I put like Craigslist? Like, who are there? Like, I guess I could do that. Like,
you should come do breath work here.
No.
Come on.
No. I'm good.
In a group.
No.
I'll go with you.
I did your yoga. Look, I did the yoga class. If I was healthy, when my back is fixed, I promise you I will start doing yoga with you.
No breath work. You just lay there the whole time.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. I won't force.
But
it's always there.
Yeah, finding your community within the industry is tough. Mm-hmm. It's tough. You didn't find it. I haven't found it, you know? And like, what can we connect on outside of like just ripping Jameson shots?
Right.
You know? Which
is a great bonding experience sometimes. And it's also
not
like
sustainable
it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
And it's yeah, I feel like those of us who have grown up in the industry and a lot of us who have a history of like having a drinking problem, like having to be like, I'm being really radically honest with you and myself and everyone saying that, that, yeah, I have to be careful about when relationships have started there, because I wonder how true they are. Like, how honest am I being in that dynamic, or how real is that? There can be, for sure. Like, I'm telling you, the friend that I met at that one place I was telling you about, she's the one I'm going to see in New York. And it can happen. She was sober.
Yeah. I think, the people you got to be the relationships you have. I think you were kind of you were expressing me about a friendship and a relationship you have with somebody who is very controlling for you. And they were like, when you didn't answer your phone, they get mad at you. They were like, why aren't you there for me all the time? Why aren't you like,
so many people?
Yeah, that's, I think that's something seriously people have to address and be like, what is like the bonds that I have with this person? Like, what is my relationship with this person sometimes? Is it healthy? Or is it one way thing? Is there a power dynamic? Is there a transactional thing about this friendship? It's not necessarily about money. Sometimes it's about attention. Sometimes it's about status or something, or I see that, I don't know, but I think, just it's tough because a lot of people have those relationships where they're friends, they have, and it might be a sexual relationship or an intimate relationship. And it's like, but.